Peptides. I bet you've heard that word a lot lately. They're pretty much the hottest buzzword in the entire wellness and fitness world, right? They're being sold with these huge promises, faster healing, better performance, you name it. But, behind all that hype, there's a really different story. One that's full of regulatory warnings and some pretty murky legal gray areas. So yeah, let's get into it.
So, what are we really talking about here? I mean, are these things the miracle cures that everyone's making them out to be? Or are people, maybe without even realizing it, taking a huge, unregulated gamble with their own health? That's the big question, and that's exactly what we're going to break down.
Okay, first things first, let's talk about why everyone is so excited. You got to understand the appeal to really get the risks, right? And honestly, the promises are, well, they're incredibly tempting. I mean, just imagine recovering from an injury in record time, or smashing your athletic goals, or even finding some new secret weapon against aging. It's really no wonder people are so interested.
And the marketing? Oh, it definitely leans into that excitement. You hear peptides, especially this one called BPC 157, being called miracle molecules. That kind of powerful branding has created this massive demand. But what that slick marketing does is it kind of just glosses over some very, very inconvenient truths.
Because, you see, once you push past all that hype, you run straight into a brick wall. And that brick wall is the FDA's red light. This is where we get a crucial reality check, straight from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
And listen, if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The FDA has absolutely not approved BPC 157 or most of these other popular wellness peptides for people to use. The Department of Defense even calls it an unapproved drug. Let me be super clear about this. That means it is not legal to prescribe or sell for human consumption, period.
So you might be asking, why is the FDA so strict about this? Well, it really all comes down to a serious lack of evidence. See, most of the research that sounds so promising, it's only been done in labs, on cells, or on animals. When you look for actual human clinical data, there's this giant gap. And on top of that, regulators have some really big concerns. Things like potential immune reactions, impurities in the products, and honestly, just not having enough info on what's actually in the bottle.
Okay, so if they're not approved, how on earth are so many people getting their hands on them? Well, this is where we step into a legal and medical minefield, and it is full of loopholes, myths, and a whole lot of confusion. So let's start untangling this mess.
It is so important to understand that there are two totally different worlds of peptides. On one side, you have legitimate FDA-approved drugs like insulin or semaglutide. These are made under super strict government oversight. But on the other side, you've got these unapproved wellness peptides, like BPC 157, that are often coming from places like compounding pharmacies with far less regulation. They are just not the same thing, not even close.
And that brings us to maybe the biggest, and frankly, most dangerous misconception out there. A lot of people, and hey, even some medical providers, argue that prescribing these peptides is just a form of off-label use. But is that actually true?
Before we go any further, let's get crystal clear on what off-label use really means. It's when a doctor prescribes an already FDA-approved medication for a purpose that's different from its original approval. The keywords there are already FDA-approved. The drug has already gone through rigorous safety trials for at least one thing.
And here is the punchline. Since peptides like BPC 157 were never ever approved by the FDA for anything in the first place, well, there is no label to go off of. See? This isn't off-label use. This is just the use of an unapproved drug, which puts it in a completely different and illegal category.
Okay, so what about the other argument you hear all the time? A lot of these peptides are sourced from compounding pharmacies. That must make it okay, right? You'd think so, but let's actually look at the rules.
The regulations for compounding pharmacies are actually surprisingly clear about this. For your traditional, smaller pharmacies, the 503As, the FDA has put BPC 157 in a category specifically for substances with safety risks, meaning they can't legally make it. And for the big outsourcing facilities, the 503Bs, well, it's not on any of their approved lists either. So for both types of pharmacies, the answer is a hard no.
So what about these special pathways you hear about, like compassionate use or expanded access? Let me tell you, this is an incredibly strict, complicated process. It is reserved for patients with serious, life-threatening conditions who have run out of all other options. It requires tons of paperwork, multiple layers of approval. It is absolutely not a backdoor for someone to get peptides for anti-aging or better gym performance. All right, so now that we've kind of debunked the common loopholes and justifications, let's get to the bottom line. let's talk about the real-world consequences for both the patients and the providers when these rules are ignored.
And these aren't just some vague theoretical risks. This is real. The Department of Justice actually went after a compounding pharmacy specifically for distributing unapproved peptides. And the result? That pharmacy was forced to forfeit nearly $1.8 million. So make no mistake, enforcement is happening, and the penalties are, well, they're severe.
For you, the consumer, the risks are all about your health. It's that simple. When you use a product that isn't approved, you have zero guarantee of what you are actually putting into your body. You have no idea if it is what it says it is, how pure it is, how strong it is, or what kind of side effects it could cause years down the road. You're basically operating completely in the dark.
And what about the doctors and clinicians prescribing these things? They are putting their entire careers on the line. I mean, think about it. Civil malpractice lawsuits if something goes wrong, disciplinary action from their state medical board, fines from the FDA, and even potentially criminal charges. The professional risks are just immense.
At the end of the day, it really all boils down to one simple but really powerful idea, which was summed up perfectly in the source material. Every injection is a gamble on the product's identity, purity, and long-term safety. Without that FDA oversight, that's exactly what you're doing. You're gambling.
So that leaves us with one last big question. We've seen the incredible hype, but we've also seen the very real, very serious risks. We know now that these are unapproved drugs being sold through legal loopholes. So the only question left is the one you really have to ask yourself. Is the potential benefit really worth that gamble?